With us today are some of the leading proponents of operatic environmental responsibility in the US and worldwide. While acknowledging that funding structures in the US are very different from Europe, it is our hope that the following conversation can be helpful to American opera administrators who care about the subject but may not know where to begin. A warm welcome to Alicia Adams, Vice President of International Programming and Dance at the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington, D.C. Also, Lena Lapelite, Lithuanian composer living in London, who wrote the hottest opera on this subject right now, Sun and Sea. Todd Clark, facilities manager at Seattle Opera in Washington State. Nicolas Condé, former sustainability coordinator here at the Center for Contemporary Opera and now chair of the Environmental Working Group at the Bristol Old Vic Theatre in the UK. And a team from Göteborg Opera Company in Sweden who spearheaded the environmentally sustainable ring cycle. Anna Hallgren, ring cycle project manager, and Natalia Konyuchenkova Anderson, environmental manager. Let's start off with Alicia Adams from the Kennedy Center, who made the bold choice to program Neo-Arctic, one of the first operas about climate change, followed by the blockbuster multimedia installation Coal and Ice, which, although not technically an opera, is operatic in scope. And you've mentioned another project about water and climate change coming up. Could you please share something about what it takes to program these works?
The theme of these works are what is so compelling, as well as the artistic elements, the artistic approach, and the ultimate product. I have to say that I do the big international festivals for the Kennedy Center. So we've done everything under the sun, from Africa to Latin America to China to India, the 22 countries of the Arab world, Iberia, France, Germany, et cetera, et cetera. But we also did a festival called Nordic Cool 2013, Nordic Cool 13. And that is when I began to work with the 5 countries representing the Nordic world. And it was there that I really became very interested in what their values were, which had to do with the environment and clean water and children's right to an arts education, things like that, healthcare. And it was something that I thought the whole world should be interested in and following. So it was then at that time that I met Kirsten Dellum, who is the artistic director of the company called Proforma, that's based in Denmark. And she had a piece called Neo-Arctic. She had several pieces that I thought were just very, very powerful. But this one was about the Anthropocene and the colors, so Anthropocene meaning what man has wrought on the continent. And it was just so beautifully done with a choir, I believe with the Latvian radio choir. And so it was operatic. You know, they sang, they had on these very beautiful costumes that changed color with the lighting, and they were telling a story, you know, about what might happen. And as Kirsten said, but there's no answer in this story, but just putting it out there and having people think about this in a very different way, not through reading or listening to a white paper or being in a forum, but actually seeing art, song, theater being used as a way to raise the level of understanding about, you know, the most important issue of our time. I mean, there's some other things going on like war, but really, and if we don't do something about climate change, then it's going to be doomed for all of us. And I think this work was just an extraordinary piece. And it was part of a series that we did called World Stages. where I brought in artists from all over the world in theater, sometimes in dance, this time in a musical theatrical presentation to perform on that series. Usually there are like 5 different groups that would participate in that. So that's the platform that I was able to use to do it. And then came along a piece, and so I've been stimulated by that work that I did with the Nordic countries. But my interest in this, and I've been thinking about it for quite a while, because most of the festivals that I did were geographic, looking at countries or continents or regions of the world. And so I was just thinking about how else I might be able to look at arts and culture in the world. So this project, Coal and Ice, came along to us, which is not an opera, but it is still along the theme of climate change. And it was brought to us by actually Michael Tilson Thomas, who was the conductor, who was very interested in this project when it happened in San Francisco. And it was produced by Asia Society. So he introduced us to the heads of to the person that was heading the project. And we became involved because it had been done in China in a much smaller form. And then they did it in San Francisco. But Michael Tilson Thomas is the Kennedy Center's 50th anniversary. And he was to conduct, and he did conduct for the National Symphony Orchestra. But his interest, and he lives in California, and the Californians are way ahead in terms of thinking about the environment and climate and food and water, all the things that we need to be mindful of, as we continue our lives and living. So he went to Deborah Rutter, who is the president of the Kennedy Center, and said, I think this is a project you should consider at the same time that we're celebrating the 50th anniversary, because this theme is so important. And she agreed. And so we decided to do it. They had planned to do it inside the Kennedy Center in one of the spaces, but there was no space really big enough to house this essentially a photographic exhibition of examples all around the world by major photographers of what was going on in terms of the melting of ice, in Greenland or in the Arctic, to the coal mining that's going on in this country and in China, and what that has done to the people, to the environment, and what it means for the future. So we created a tent. We built a tent on the plaza of the Kennedy Center to house this exhibition, which was also a space for performances. And we had various performers to participate who were doing work around this theme. There was an orchestra from Chinese orchestra from Bard College that came in also to perform. We had theatrical performances there, but basically it was that people could actually see through these extraordinary photographs of what was going on in the world. And so it was quite spectacular. And then there was, culinary is also something that has been of interest to me for all of the festivals that I have done, because I think food tells such a story about people, about art, about culture, what we eat, why we eat it, what grows in that environment. So we had Alice Waters to do a dinner for us, which was really spectacular. And then it was for about 200 people. And she talked about the ingredients and, why she chose this and, organic that. It was, really quite wonderful, what people were then exposed to and had the opportunity to actually meet her. And she walked around from table to table. And again, this was in this tent. So it really created a wonderful, environment for it. And as I mentioned before, one of the things that I have been thinking about for probably 10 years, it's when I got a map in the mail from National Geographic that had a list and a photograph of the world and indications of all the rivers in the world. And I began to think about that, because rivers are the place where all civilization has grown up, starting with the Tigris and the Euphrates. And how could we use rivers as a theme to talk about arts and culture, and to then bring attention to rivers, to water, to the environment, to climate change. So the next festival that I am planning is in April of 2023, and it's called River Run. And we are working steadfastly now to make it happen. But it will include all of the performing arts, music, dance, and theater, plus the visual arts, literature, film, fashion, food, design, in order to tell these stories and allow people to enter, at any point. We were just having a conversation with Circus Circor. This may or may not come to pass. We hope so, though. That had done a high wire act in the Galway Festival in Ireland, and it was to bring attention to risk, and what that meant, and what that means in terms of this issue as well. So we're looking at possibly doing a high wire act across the Potomac, because we sit on the banks of the Potomac. So there will be indoor and outdoor events. We're looking at, the Amazon, the Ganges. There will be a dance performance that focuses on that. There will be exhibitions in the Hall of Nations and Hall of States that will focus on the flight patterns of the birds that travel along the rivers, and also the flying rivers, that are the rivers that are so important to the ecosystem, because it comes out of the Amazon, and the water goes into the air, and it travels along a path that's been created, that has happened for hundreds and hundreds of years. And that is what helps to sustain the rain and all of the things that are needed for things to be sustainable in various parts of the world. So we'll do these exhibitions that will show this, but these will be exhibitions that will be in the air, not on ground level, and using these extraordinary artists to do that. And so it's work like that we are doing. As a Vietnamese composer, Vanessa Van O, who we have commissioned a work about about Vietnam and the Mekong River, which travels through several, I think it's like 7 different countries, to talk about that story. And that was sort of interesting to me, because the Mekong has so much resonance in this country because of the Vietnamese War. And so to use that as a way to talk about this river, but also to talk about, the relationship between the countries, and what has happened, and, why this is so important, and who these people are. And I think people don't realize that these rivers run through many, many countries. Like the Nile is another one that runs through about 10 different countries. It's the longest river in the world. The Mississippi is one that's very important. And what we're doing for the Mississippi is to do a musical presentation on Louis Armstrong, who grew up in New Orleans. And he learned really to perfect his craft on a riverboat on the Mississippi. from the time he was 17 till the time he was 21. And he actually recorded music onto, on an album of those songs. So we're going to recreate that, but take it a little bit further with a artist, a trumpeter named Nicholas Payton, who is consulting with us to do that. So, I mean, those are just some examples, and there are, it's just been great to be able to learn so much about rivers and about arts and culture and about civilization. Da Vinci is another piece. In literature, we will explore Leonardo da Vinci. If you haven't noticed, in all of his paintings, there's always a river. He was very concerned with the environment back in the 1500s. And so and all the engineering that he worked on to deal with water and just a variety of things. He was the Renaissance man personified. So we're doing a literary series, a literary presentation on Da Vinci that will have an artist also that will be creating as the storytelling is going on. Walter Isaacson, who wrote the biography on Leonardo da Vinci, will be a part of it, as well as Maria Rana, who is the curator for, she used to be the Washington Post book editor, and then she curated the National Book, the National Book Festival for the Library of Congress, and has curated many things there. So I've worked with her for the last 20 years. So she will curate this piece as well as another series that we will do on literature. But all this to say is that this theme is one that I think is really, really so important. And it's taken me to explore it in different ways, from the opera to Coal and Ice and now to River Run, which will have a 10-year trajectory that every other year we will do a major festival, and in between we will do what we're calling a biennale, which will focus on an aspect of the theme. We want to look at space, and we want to look at energy, going forward, all as part of this issue of climate and the environment. So that's my story right now.
It's incredible. Thank you so much for, this incredible programming that you're doing, and it's on a national scope and international. Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for inviting me to participate in this and for your interest in it as well.
And I'll be there in April at the River Run for sure.
Oh, great.
I do want to ask you two questions
Mhm.
if you still have a moment.
Sure.
One question is, what have been some of the unexpected benefits of programming climate related works, and maybe what have been some of the unexpected challenges for you as a programmer?
Mhm. I would say the benefits, for the institution have certainly been that it has attracted a different audience. We are working with the UN on this, and we're listed as one of the partners for the UN Water Day that will take place in March 22nd of 2023. So we're partnering with them. There's a conference that will also happen. So it's great to have these interconnections, and also to be able to influence what happens in a conference like that, to include the arts in a way that they might not have thought of. And so that I think is a huge benefit, and a way to just continue to make sure that the arts are represented and understood, that they're such a vital tool to understanding people and to understanding so much that goes on in the world. The difficulty in doing something like this is that we haven't done it like this before. And so sometimes it feels like pushing a boulder, up a mountain internally, to have people understand why we're doing this, why this is important, and how the art is the intersection of the art and this theme. So we work hard at educating everybody around this, and I like to think of the festivals that we do as being knowledge based. And it has always been my goal to have people learn something, from this, from the work that we do. We're partnering with George Washington University, with Georgetown University, on the River Run, and also we partnered with them before on Coal and Ice and on other projects that we have done. So, we're putting together forums. We're getting scientists engaged with us, and people just come to us that are interested. All of the embassies that we are also engaged with to, are involved with this project. So it's just gathering this. We have a shorter amount of time to do it because of COVID, and so we are racing, to the finish line to make it happen. But it's coming together, and I think it'll be an exciting time in Washington at that time. So it'll run from March 22nd, World Water Day, to April the 12th, I believe, is Earth Day. But the core of the festival will be the first 2 weeks in April at the Kennedy Center. So
amazing. And maybe one last question. What might you have to say to an American opera administrator who cares about this subject but doesn't know where to begin in terms of being bold with their programming, and exactly what you're saying, having to educate everybody on the inside of the organization as to why this is important?
Right, to make the artists your allies in this, those artists whose work you admire, that are doing the work that's focused on this issue, to seek them out and to engage them, and they will really be an asset for you in terms of the programming as well. I think of people like Tan Dun or Wang Rua, who has done so much in terms of opera, and also in terms of this theme as well, and somebody we will work with on the River Run Festival. He's done other stuff at the Kennedy Center. But there are many of these artists, singers, directors, performers. I think that for me, that has been a huge part of the inspiration, and also to look at the literature of the day, what is being written about it, and to seek out those writers. And there may be something there to be adapted, from some of the writings that are being produced on the topic. So they're just, look at the food. Is there a story to be told there? So just off the cuff, those are just some suggestions.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're so welcome, Sarah. It's such a pleasure to talk to you and to be a part of this, and good luck.
So also a warm welcome to Lina Lapelite, a Lithuanian composer living in London who wrote the hottest opera on this subject right now, Sun and Sea.
Hi, hello. It's a pleasure to be part of this panel. So yeah, I'll just tell a little story about the Sun and Sea, because I feel that even though we position it as an opera, it's a kind of, it's a work that can be situated in very different contexts. So we show it in theater, we show it in the museums, we show it in like music festivals. So first of all, the work first appeared in 2017 in Lithuania by 3 Lithuanian authors, Rugilė Barzdžiukaitė, Vaiva Grainytė, and me, Lina Lapelytė. So we never kind of prioritize any of our roles in writing the opera. So it's a shared work between three artists, and we don't. I think it's quite often to like prioritize the composer in, you know, in opera world, or like director in the theater world. So we really equally share the credits for the work, and also our word in saying how things should go. So music is not more important than the visual aspect, and the visual aspect is not more important than the text and the lyrics. And also the performers who are part of the opera belong to the psychology of making the work. They each of them contribute to what the work is. So basically, the starting of the piece was the image that we had, that it should be situated on the artificial internal beach, and that where the some kind of little detail of society can be found. We realize that the beach is a place where everyone kind of becomes equal under the sun, and at the same time it's, you know, everyone comes to consume the sun, consume the human resources. And so the work is kind of situated around the climate change, but also around the fragility of the human body that is exhausting the earth, but also like exhausted human body in the current speed of time, and kind of, you know, the overworked mentality. so so that's the kind of basic idea of the piece. And when we first built it in Lithuania in 2017 at the National Gallery, then this we kind of wanted to have this super extremely bright image of the beach, sunlit beach, that's so bright, that's almost like too bright. And therefore the music as well, it's very light. It sounds like as if you hear a pop song that you know from before, but it's not really like reciting any particular pop song. And um, and the idea was that also the music is very bright as the beach itself. And and we also were kind of, we wanted to make a work. We knew it's a climate change work, but we didn't want to make it like didactic. So I think in the recent interview in the Guardian, we said, you know, the title said like climate change opera. What can be worse than that, you know? And I think for us this climate change was never like a very direct message. There are a lot of layers in the work that after a while reveal, you know, the kind of the consuming part of our society. And I think I'm kind of going a bit over time. Maybe it's time to like show a few images of the piece. So after this, like 2017, then the work was selected to represent Lithuania at the Venice Biennial, where it became the Lithuanian Pavilion. And from this very sort of almost like DIY approach of making the work, it turned this super successful piece with long queues waiting outside the pavilion. And then we realized, okay, this is becoming something completely different than we kind of imagined in the beginning. Of course, we planned to tour it, and we wanted it to be heard, and but somehow the success was a bit like unexpected for such a small country as Lithuania, and also artists that are not like really belonging to any kind of field. Um, so, or, you know, or represented by like huge galleries. So, and then we received a lot of invitations, of course, to tour the piece. And And one of the main aspects of the work that is observed from above, from we say like God's perspective, or bird's eye view, or sun's perspective. So every time we tour, we ask for a specific architecture to accommodate the work, or sometimes then if it's not possible, then the scaffolding structure is built to accommodate the specific scenography. So maybe now we can go into picture number 1. So this was the first show in 2017 in Lithuania. And if you go to the next slide. And this was, well, we can't see much of the architecture here, but this is the image from Venice, where the work was performed twice a week, 9 hours a day for almost half a year. So it was a huge project to take up, but at the same time, of course, we knew like the funding we have, and we knew how much it cost to like hire performers, and what would it mean to take people for half a year to Venice. So from the very beginning, we knew that the only solution for us to make such scale work of such scale, we need to work with local performers. So basically, after like so the piece was performed by local singers in Venice, which I think added like another layer of the work. However, when we were invited to tour it, and there was this idea that maybe we could follow the same scenario and produce the work everywhere we go, to work with the local performers. So from the sustainability point of view, we thought, like it's much more sustainable to invite 3 artists for like, I don't know, like a month or 2 at that time, to develop the piece with the local performance and do it. But then there were so many limitations that we realized, like, if we do that, we could not do anything else. So the decision was made that we would form a touring group and then continue showing it with a half Italian and half Lithuanian cast. So like the next locations that you can see in the next pictures, this was in Luckenwalde in Germany. It was an abandoned swimming pool, a Bauhaus swimming pool, which was actually amazing. They produced the heating, they produce electricity locally in the it's an artist-run space who maintain themselves through producing electricity. So they also made like heated floor for us from the electricity they get locally. That was this. Then it was performed in Teatro in Argentina. Yeah, this is in Vilnius, in the abandoned, not abandoned, but like a taxi park, car park, which is not functional anymore. It's like an enclosed serpentine that the person who bought the building preserved this architecture, and it was perfect for us. So I think this was one of the most incredible locations up to date to show the work. And the next slide is the Teatro Argentina, where in this Baroque theater they removed the seatings from where the audience usually sits and filled it up with sand, which was kind of radical thing to do, but it worked really nicely for the piece. So yeah, all these locations, all this traveling, of course, we are always thinking and rethinking what it means to travel. How can we improve our footprint on doing that? My recent kind of excuse for touring the work was perhaps it's better that we go to different places to show than people would try to follow the work. You know, it's still like less of an impact. And of course, what we realize as well is every time that we come to a different place, not all the places are used to accommodate performances. You know, that requires, you know, like shower, food, snacks, a lot of things, and then realize we actually need to come with our own instructions or suggestions how to do that, because in some places, you know, the impact, the environmental impact can be quite large, you know, to accommodate us. So, you know, all these things that we learn, I think it's also interesting that, you know, Lucia, the curator of Lithuanian Pavilion, Lucia Pietrojusti, she formed, like, together with the piece, sometimes she creates like a program around sustainability if like institution wants to have that. So we feel that's an important thing as well to do sometimes when it is possible. So I guess that's it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. That's amazing. And I love the visual of that big car park with the looking down. That's incredible. It's so striking. Shifting now to the physical infrastructure of environmental responsibility, practicing what we preach, and much appreciation to Lena for what you just said about touring, because that's such an important part of the operatic process. Seattle Opera is leading the pack in the United States when it comes to reducing the environmental impact of their operating facilities. Wolf Trap Opera has also made progress on this front. Todd Clark, welcome. And can you talk about shepherding the process of building Seattle Opera's new LEED certified opera center?
Yes, hi. Thank you for having me on this panel. Yeah, I'm going to talk about the Seattle Opera's LEED program and the construction of our new building, which we started a demo on in March of 2017 and finished in December of 2018. If we can just start with the slideshow here, I will and you can see right there, that's the cornerstone of our building, and that's Tagney Jones Hall, and that's sort of what we consider the jewel box of the building, and that's our community center. So we do a lot of community-led activities through that venue. The next slide, I'm going to talk about the general overview. And so this is it was our mission statement. The Seattle Opera Building is a high performance facility, both in terms of human comfort and resource conservation. Wherever possible, the project will employ passive systems, such as locating the most glassy elements to the north to minimize solar heat gain while providing a well-insulated envelope throughout. Systems like daylight harvesting and water efficient plantings will provide enhanced human experience while minimizing waste, and in turn will result in lower operating costs. So slide 2, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the different points. So these are some of the credits. There was actually quite a few, but I'm going to talk to about 7 of them. And so initially we were going for LEED Gold, but like everything, you know, you shoot for the stars, and if you come somewhere in between, then you're doing pretty good. So we landed in LEED Silver. So some of the talking points or the credits that I want to go over are our site has to be sustainable. So in order to achieve that goal, our building or our land has to not be, it can't be farmlands, it can't be parklands, and it can't be floodplain or on habitat. for any threatened or endangered species. We also qualified as a brownfield, what they call brownfield redevelopment. So the previous site had contaminated soil, and we rehabilitated it through the redevelopment process. Another concept that we achieved was heat island effect reduction. So you can achieve this through two different ways. And one is a highly reflective roof or a planted roof, a live roof. And we chose a reflective roof because we had so many mechanical systems up there. So if you go up on our roof, it's all white. And on a sunny day, you probably won't be able to see. It's so blinding up there without sunglasses. And so we have very reduced heat collection, and it also extends the life of the roof. Another way that we qualified for LEED was through water efficient landscaping. So this was about a 50% reduction in water usage. So we used drought tolerant indigenous plants. And in addition to bioretention planters, which collect rainwater, and that allows a slow drainage process, and it conserves water, which would otherwise be lost into the sewer system. We also greatly reduced our water usage inside the building by about 35%. And this was achieved through low flow kitchen and bathroom fixtures. And then I'm going to go to the third slide, which gives us just a couple more items, general items. And a big one was optimizing energy performance. And we were able to do this by implementing sustainable construction methods and mechanical systems. So some of those examples might be walls are highly insulated to control heat or cool load loss. Glass is dispersed throughout to share the natural daylight and reduce light use. We use a lot of glass in the building where we can. And then there's light sensors that detect and reduce electrical light demand when called for, which also includes occupancy sensor usage. And we use controlled electrical outlets throughout the building to reduce electrical usage of any items plugged in during unoccupied hours. So we encourage people to plug in a lot of their items into those outlets. And then we have an HVAC system that utilizes unoccupied schedules. We have an energy recovery ventilation system, which essentially just cools outside air when possible to reduce heat loads throughout the building. So buildings generally have a tendency to want to overheat. They generate a lot of natural heat. Here in Seattle, we're fairly cool climate about 8 months out of the year, 9 months out of the year. So we'll be able to utilize a lot of bring in a lot of natural cool air to keep the heat load reduced. We are also, every year we have to submit an energy usage report to the city of Seattle, where they benchmark and track our efficiency rating. This keeps us compliant. And then another way we are LEED certified is through a recycle and reuse program. And so we try to minimize our waste output through recycle and composting programs. I think sadly here in America, we recycle something like 9% of all of our possible recyclable waste. So we're definitely trying to get better here at the Seattle Opera. I'm sure we do much greater than 9%. And then all of the wood benching in the Tegny Jones Hall, which I showed in the first slide, the glass building on the corner there, all of the wood benching in there is reclaimed wood from the previous structure. So we kept a little history from the previous building. And then the last item I'll talk about under LEED certification is the indoor environmental quality. And that's increased air circulation and filtering through advanced HVAC systems. So in our chorus room, we're able to, because there's a lot of singing involved in there, we're able to circulate the air in there recirculate the air in there 4 times an hour. And then in Tegny Jones Hall, it's 9 times per hour. So we get a significant amount of air movement, which turned out to be a blessing in disguise when the pandemic came into play. And the other item under environmental indoor quality is low emitting materials. So everything we use during the construction of adhesives, sealants, paints, coatings, and floor systems. There's little zero off-gassing and very low emissions. So those are basically sort of a summation of some of the LEED silver credits that we got. There's probably 3 times more than that. But there's just some of the general ones that I wanted to touch on. And then I'm going to go to the next slide, and we're going to quickly talk about just a summary of challenges and benefits to give everyone an idea of some of the unexpected challenges. So we work with a large variety of end users. And performers were a big part of that group. And so we needed a predictable and healthy atmosphere for the performers. And if you try something new, unlike what has been done before, you need to take out the risk factor or minimize the risk. So you need a plan B because you're trying a lot of new things in LEED in a performance space. And sometimes they just don't work out the way you thought they would, or they're not accepted the way you thought they would be. So minimize that risk and be able to have a backup plan. So many good ideas were discussed and very few were utilized. Be resilient and keep trying, I guess, is the message there. For instance, rehearsal spaces with options for natural light and offices with natural ventilation. For the Seattle, we achieved the former, not the latter. So, it was, hit and miss. And then in general, LEED certification is very challenging. The documentation can be daunting. There's a lot of red tape, especially here in the US. And we did not achieve all of the LEED credits, but we wanted to, continue to stretch for sustainability goals and constructing a healthy building and try to align it to a company culture. And we thought that is very important. So some quick unexpected benefits were we initially were wanting to introduce an open office seating concept, and it was met with a lot of feedback because in our old building we were used to the old ways and an entirely different, more closed concept. Lots of walled offices and cubicles and things, but upon completion, employees actually embraced the more open concept and the community feeling, a sense of collaboration, and really didn't miss the 8-foot tall cubicle walls that they had prior. And added a lot of just natural light in the building, and it was more airy and conducive for an artistic environment, really. And then we added a central staircase that linked all the floors together, it actually encouraged people to walk more instead of using the elevator. So everybody now is very proud of walking from 0 to the 3rd floor. Yeah, so it kind of turned into a little bit of a competition. And then the last item is really having a LEED certified building has acted as a learning tool to promote sustainability practices internally as well as externally. So we really get to, pivot from our artistic conversations and performance arts and opera conversations to environmental now, and it's a very relevant part of our everyday experience here at Seattle Opera. So that kind of concludes the LEED, the sustainability part of it. And if we go to the last slide, it's sort of the I guess bonus content. And these were sort of just 3 basic items that I thought were kind of important. If you're involved in a new construction or a build out of any kind, and these are sort of lessons learned. And I just commented on commissioning a LEED certified modern building has a large learning curve and allow for twice as much time as you think it will take. Ask for as much training on building management systems as you can possibly get. And relationships are extremely important during the process. So I always encourage you to have an excellent relationship with your construction contractor, your subcontractors. And you will need to lean on them heavily for support, and always utilize your subcontractors during your initial service and maintenance agreements. They're most familiar with the systems. And the third item is just ask for guidance on how best to integrate all of your building systems. It's extremely important because they won't offer that for you. Yeah, and if you want to click on that timeline, I don't know if that link will work, but we can try it real quick. And then I thought it would be kind of fun to, if it does work, to run through the photos. So if you scroll to the very bottom, there should be a bar to the bottom there. Yeah, you can. I was gonna have you scroll from bottom to the top, and it shows the actual demo of the building prior that was on this site. So that was the Mercer Arena that was built in, I think, 1920s. So it was sitting vacant for about 10 years until we could get through enough funding and the economic downturn in 2007 and a variety of hurdles. But just an interesting, if you want to scroll just through them quickly, and it'll show the process that we went through.
Amazing process.
Yeah, and all of the construction materials were locally sourced, and we tried to be considerate about the environment through that process as well, involved the local economy in the process. There's quite a few pictures. It was interesting because every few days I would be on site and there would be a new wall or a new doorway, or there wouldn't, so there was always a challenge of trying to figure out how to navigate through the building for the first year of construction. But it was a massive undertaking. It's a 105,000 square foot building. Roughly, we raised about $60 million to build the structure. You'll see the iconic Space Needle. So we have quite the view of the Space Needle.
Thank you so much, Todd. And we can also make these pictures available on a link as with supplemental materials. Thank you. An amazing process, and so many things that you might not think about, like taking the stairs, and so many things about building and building. Thank you. I'd like to move on now to our next presenters, which are our two friends in Sweden. And it seems to me like they are on the forefront of, producing a production aiming towards net zero, but it arrives at environmental sustainability. As Todd was saying, you shoot for the stars and you end up somewhere along the way. So they insist they might not be on the forefront, but I think they are. So welcome to Anna Hallgren and Natalia Konyuchenkova from the Göteborg Opera Company in Sweden that has mounted an environmentally sustainable ring cycle. I hand it over to you.
Oh, thank you for having us. And I am Anna Hallgren. I am a project manager here at the Göteborg Opera in Gothenburg, Sweden. We are a wholly owned opera. We are owned by the taxpayers, the southwest Sweden region, you can say. So we are in our house with around 500 employees. We produce opera, musicals, and modern dance. We have a very good dance company touring around the world. And we did in the years from 2018 and 2021, we put up the Ring Cycle by Wagner in a very special project. And to this project, we also connected a very special environmental project to see how far we could get with this. And it all started with the artistic director, which Natalia can tell us about.
Yes. Steven Langridge was our artistic director at that time, and the Ring Cycle was his project, you could say. I have been in house in that point of time for 8 years and consulting for the environmental issues. And being up to top management like twice a season, and just telling and showing the progress that the whole house actually made, because we have an environmental group with people representing from all over every department, I would say. And this environmental group is very engaged people, very light on initiatives, and very happy to take next step all the time. So we had many years also with quite a lot of pressure on us from outside, from our local government, from people expecting in Sweden the environmental issues are quite huge. And all this Steven have been listening to and seen. And once he just said, well, I'm intrigued. Let us see how we can open up from the artistic perspective. And we became very, very inspired by him, actually. At this point of time, we became inspired by Steven because he took this initiative from the artistic perspective and not from a technical perspective that we had already. if you had asked me at that point of time if I knew how this project would play out, I would say, yes, absolutely, piece of pie. We know all the ingredients of energy efficiency, recycling, reusing, all the usual stuff, not traveling so much. And of course, as you can imagine, there are a lot of things that made us quite surprised. But very crucial things happened, decisions that were made from the start. And I would say Alison Chitty, who is the designer for both costume and the whole set for all 4 operas, that was the same person taking this huge project on from the start. It was very important that it was the same person, and the decisions were made taking this opportunity, taking this like for many years of work, and saying, let's try, let's explore, but we will have this particular framework. And I would just quote her a little bit here. So she said, like, we have decided to design one set which we will use for all 4 operas. It will change and evolve, get distressed and disintegrated as we go through the cycle. And I would say, as an environmental nerd, like I am, I would say that made all the difference for the waste flows, for the chosen materials, how we were able to actually reuse them, not only the classical recycling, but actually reuse them, some of the pieces were put in the ground to improve soil with our local bio farmers, local government and the local bio farmers. So it's amazing. Some things became really amazing stuff. I will try to summarize a little bit. So it was Stephen had this opportunity and said, let us take this adventure together, let's explore. And that was it. So in the team, we actually felt that we needed some goals, like a little bit more particular objectives in this. So now we want to show you the second picture that we had, the second slide, if Nico wants to help us with that. So this is the house, and yes, Anna.
So we actually, when I had the project handed over from the management, it wasn't really specified in the goals. So Natalia, the only thing that was really very clear was that Natalia should be working with the project, and what was absolutely necessary for me to have the science by my side. So we had the science, we had the theater production, but we also wanted to work with the audience. So we started a group together with Lena Jacks, who is the head of marketing. And the 3 of us met every second week to follow up where we are. And we actually put it up those goals. And this is what we aimed for during the whole project. And we have had it for 5 years, about. And the first one was to the theater production, to develop and identify new methods for our production process so that it has less of an impact on the environment. The second one was to share our experience with colleagues nationally and internationally. And this is what we are doing right now. And the third one was to engage audiences, the general public, educational institutions, and the business community. As we are so involved in the West region of Sweden, and we are owned by the region and taxpayers, and we are working so close together actually all the time. This was an important goal, the third one. So this is the little group that started, and then of course together with all people working with a project from each department, we are working in a project organization. So the project had some people from the makeup department, some people from the stage department, from the upholstery. So we collected around this task, everybody, and there were huge expectations and frustration every day, you can say, because everybody wanted so much and we couldn't really do everything. But
yeah, well, let us try to give some examples just to, you know, touch upon something we made. I mean, almost all expectations was within the objective number 1. So the test bed of materials and methods. So mostly all of the comments and all of higher expectations and frustrations was actually mostly within the first one. And that's where also made a lot of effort from the beginning. We thought, because it's just in the start, and with the first opera we actually make a framework for the rest of the whole project. And actually Alison, together with the assistants, they found by themselves, without any help of me, just found the perfect solution to reduce our climate footprint from the stage set. Just very, very simply, not using plastics, but using the wooden materials, quite cheap wooden chips pressed into sheets, which is, if you look at the life cycle assessment on that material, you can see it's a carbon storage, so it's a net plus for environment, and just that huge volume of the sheets that make up the room, and the room that is always changing, and quite a lot of materials. But by being carbon storage already, we are on the plus side. So that was a huge success, I would say. And that also we made it into collaboration with local biofarming and the charcoal thing that we could speak a lot more about. But we also had collaboration with industry for innovative steel material for costume, which was very, very interesting. It was also for material library, international. Actually, you have one in New York for a fact, and we have one very close to us. So material library, we collaborated with them and tried out some materials there with industry. We had some collaboration with community playgrounds for kids. They took care of some of the waste from us and build up a playground for kids here locally. We reuse, of course, a lot of reused materials, a lot of reused costumes, a lot of reuse and secondhand. Nothing really new under the sun there, but they several of departments tested a lot of things. They tested and they tried out, and they saw maybe, yes, this worked, but not this time, but next time maybe we can use it. So a lot of learning was done. One example is the makeup department produced their own fresh makeup to use on the artists, just to see how it works, to mix it all from the start with less ingredients that are much more healthy. Anyway, so departments tested a lot of things. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't work. So a little bit frustration and successes were done. We had a fake fire, of course. We needed to have a fire in this production, and it would be very strange to burn fossil fuels to make a fire on stage. So we had to, that was early on, we knew we had to find another solution. So we invested in a technique which makes fire from, looks like fire, but it's vapor. vapor and light. So it's and that investment has been reused in several productions after that. Already, it was reused during this this project already. So many things, like many technical solutions, were planned to be reused, to stay in-house for several projects for many years. Our stage lights department had a lot of talks with their suppliers and learned a lot from them. So a lot of, and I would say that the first objective we had, this test bed, it actually comes together in the third objective when we collaborate. Collaboration was the whole, I would say, the biggest success in this. Collaboration with local community. We would not be able to reuse or recycle things by ourselves. So we needed people wanting the materials as well. And we needed to have friends who wanted and knew what to do with the stuff. So we made a lot of friends there. Schools, art school, our universities, and NGOs, local NGOs. For the second objective, participation in European projects, Oscar project, we had meetings with Opera Europe and connecting with our colleagues and friends throughout. And sometimes it's hard to talk about successes or not successes within the project when it's still on. So it has been a little bit challenging actually to talk about it when you're in the middle of it. But the third one, I think the third objection, the campaigns that our marketing department did with audience was amazing. We had no expectations there, but that was really thrilling and exciting and fun. And I think our audience were surprised, and we reached out to people who were in the beginning were not interested at all, but now felt that they can contribute somehow to the whole thing. There was collecting on mobile phones to recycle them about climate change challenge, and actually our audience, the effort they made through that challenge was threefold of our own effort to make the climate better. So if you calculate the effect, I would say it was huge, and that was really fun. And we had also biodiversity. We developed a biodiversity calendar for people to know little things you can do by yourself in your garden or in your local community to help biodiversity, make it as a nice little artwork by itself. Just some examples. So I would say that was surprising. The third aim we had, that was a really surprise. Anna, to you?
Yeah, something that happened that was not so fun and unexpected was the pandemic, of course, in the middle of everything after the Valkyrie bang. But in some way we succeeded actually to do also Siegfried and the Götterdämmerung. Siegfried we had to do without audience, but we did it and we went on. But this project, what happened was, because we had a lot of publicity at the first premiere, which made us visible. It's not that we had done something unique at all, but we had reached out our hands and said, hello, here we are. We want to do something. Can we do it together? And we got in touch with a lot of people, friends, other opera houses in Europe who were also aiming for this kind of work. So we were invited to some communities, and we were just about to start to go on working together with other operas in Europe when the pandemic came, and then we just had to quit everything and focus on survival, everybody. you know how it was. But this has made that the performances are done, but the environmental sustainability project is still running, and the Wagner's ring cycle is built. The story is built upon the Nordic myth, and there is a tree, the ash tree Yggdrasil, who's get totally destroyed in the Götterdämmerung. And then there was a lovely idea from the beginning from the team. We must plant ash trees at the end. And we fought a lot with this. There were really so many problems on the way. And oh shit, there is an ash tree disease. We can't plant 3 trees that will die in a year or so. But at last, Natalia actually had found the University of Agriculture in South Sweden. There is a group, scientists working with the ash tree disease, and they have 30 plants of ash trees in South Sweden waiting for us, and we will actually plant them in the region in June next year. And this will be the end of the project, but we will of course continue the work. And what we want to do next is to get the sustainability work in our DNA in the production process. We work together with the artists like we did in the ring, and find a way of a systematic production process with sustainability.
It's so amazing. Thank you so much. It's inspirational and a little bit overwhelming for us on the American side to hear that you've been doing this for so long and you integrate all the departments of your company. It's so amazing to hear what can happen. And also that the taxpayers are pressuring you to do this. That's amazing. Thank you. Nico, I'm going to ask you to be incredibly brief. I'm sorry, we actually need to end pretty much on time. I have to go conduct a rehearsal. But Nico, can you, and then maybe we'll ask you to give something in writing, just like one sentence. What's your advice to American opera administrators who care about this, but they don't know where to start? So Nico, please, whatever you can say.
Well, I'll be as brief as I can. Thank you for having me. I had the privilege to join Francesca Campagna during COVID, actually, to start looking at how CCO could look at being more sustainable and also help others in that journey in the US, which was very exciting. And what was more exciting for me was the fact that the way in which we looked at sustainability was reshaped by the crisis and was reshaped by the challenges that the company was facing in that context, and probably in terms of financial sustainability from the fact that it couldn't perform, etc. And the biggest challenge was that the Center for Contemporary Opera didn't have a venue. So it's like, okay, how do we change the way in which we do things when we are kind of virtual? But that presented a massive opportunity to relook at absolutely everything and to be very creative. I think that what's exciting about this is that being sustainable, regenerative, or however you want to call it, requires creative solutions, and there's no one more suited to do this than performing arts organizations. So I think it's all about collaboration, and the most exciting part of that journey was to have the board and to have the general director involved in that conversation, and to genuinely look at changing the way in which we do everything. On one side, understanding the power that cultural organizations have to inspire change on audiences, and on the other side, okay, what's the way in which we are producing those shows, and how can we do that better, rather than trying to fix things at the end of the supply chain, or try to, which in the end becomes palliative. So it's about being proactive, I think, and having the general director and having the artists involved in that conversation was very exciting, and to acknowledge that the climate crisis is also a human rights crisis. So it's as much about the environment as it is about people. And I think that the choices that Francesca made in terms of program for these days after hopefully the pandemic are also aligned with the environment, in the sense of giving voices to to the right people and to the right artists to have that conversation beyond carbon. So on the side of that, we also had the opportunity to look at an action plan and from a very humble timeline and with huge ambitions and work that I believe is being picked up from them, and this conversation is part of that as well. But I think it was about looking at embedding sustainability in the work that CCO does going forwards, and how to embed that in a company that has a completely different structure than, for example, our colleagues in Seattle, which have a huge building and are in control of different elements than the ones that CCO is in control. And how do you embed that when projects work almost independently from one another, and how do you translate that and kind of try to keep that going simultaneously? So we focus a lot on, okay, what information, or I don't like the way the word educating in this context, but how do we provide the tools for those different projects and for the people managing those different projects to have those considerations on a case-by-case basis? Because you know, this is not something you can look with a massive lens. It's something that you have to be very specific about, and you have to understand, because it's very complicated, and you might believe that you're doing the right thing and you're not necessarily doing the right thing, and that shouldn't stop you from trying. But I think it's about finding ways to revisit that process over and over again. And for example, now I'm working in the Bristol Vic in Bristol, which is a fantastic theatre from the 1700s, and that's a completely different challenge. And everything that I work with Francesca in New York was kind of almost irrelevant when I came here, because suddenly we had a listed building that is considered the oldest English-speaking theatre in the world, and a local community and the same setting, and being in control of different things and different elements, and not being in control of others. So I think, and this came out in previous conversations, and there were previous talks, and everything was very interesting, everyone said, and I think it's mainly about creativity, collaboration, and proactivity. I think that those are the main elements that we should be considering, and look at carbon and look at measuring, because it's hard to improve what you don't understand or what you're not aware of. So, but that also can be very overwhelming, and data can become very overwhelming, and trying to find all of that if you don't have the resource, which is also a problem, to generally start looking at that. You know, it's fascinating to hear that an opera house has for so long a team looking specifically at that, but I also am aware that that's not the case in many places, and that overwhelming feeling shouldn't stop us from at least trying and putting the systems that we can control in place, and think beyond carbon, and think about the conversations that you want to have with your community. Think about who who is in your community, what are the inequalities regarding climate change that are in your community, what is your responsibility in a global sense as well, in terms of what's the impact of what we do elsewhere in the world. So yeah, I think I really appreciate the fact that CCO is having this conversation, and I think that there are different ways to approach this, and no one no one has the right approach or the wrong approach. I think it's all about trying, and it's about having an action plan, and it's about revisiting the action plan, and it's about getting the board on board. It's about getting the CEOs on board, the artistic directors, the artists, and to not leave anyone behind in that journey. And to get sure that, because, for example, at least in the UK, for example, the freelance force is very important for making theatre. And if theatres move in one direction, but the freelance space is no part of that journey, then we won't be able to implement what we're trying to do. So yeah, I think it's about collaboration.
Thank you so much, Nico. One last sentence from some of you, if you could say one sentence to an American opera administrator, where to start, what would that be? Lena?
I need another minute.
Okay, Todd?
I think networking, that's the key, is a hive mind is the best way to try to achieve the maximum.
Thank you. Lena, are you ready?
Yeah, I think I would actually go for collaboration as a key word for any future, good, especially also institutional collaboration. We experience quite a few like competitive institutions that would say, okay, if like the piece is going there, we don't want it, so we don't want to gather resources together and to like share the outcome of it, and then we realize, okay, like that's like where it all starts. So if we talk about climate, how can we like be against collaborating with something and like compete institutionally?
Thank you. And Anna and Natalia?
I would say networking also, collaboration, networking, reach out hands. Doesn't matter who you are, if you're a huge house or a small theater. Everybody can learn something.
I would say there will always be opposition. There will always be proactive people. You have to remind. Sometimes you will meet them every day within half an hour, and you will have to revisit the plan and remind yourself why you're doing stuff you do.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you, including Nico. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on this panel. It took about a heartbeat for all of you to agree, and I'm very grateful for that. And also, once more, gratitude to Opera America for funding this program. And Opera America is so brilliant at having curated conversations within the American opera industry for years. And we do hope that with this modest start, that other companies and other organizations may take this conversation into the public sphere in the United States in every public meeting and every public gathering. Thank you so much. Thank you each.